Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Furtado, and in today's episode, I am going to uncover and talk about how to we actually teach our athletes how to be better communicators. And most people, most coaches that I have seen have addressed this in the wrong way. And let's just jump right in and start with that. Now, the traditional way to get your athletes to communicate more on the court is to yell, holler, scream at them, communicate more. Now, in that scenario, who is the one that's communicating the most? Coach, right? At the end of the day, what is the job of a coach? The job of a coach is to help players go from point A to point B. Now, is communication a skill like anything else? Yes. Now, is a skill like becoming a better shooter? Does it happen? Do I just yell at player A, hey, become a better shooter, start shooting more, and they're immediately going to be a better shooter? No, right? It takes time. It takes practice, consistent practice, and it takes coaching, right? It takes praise, it takes accountability, and it takes a lot of practice, right? I don't think Steph Curry became the best shooter of all time, right? I have become a better communicator over time. Part of it is from the podcast. Part of it is from coaching, right? Part of it is because I've invested in my learning and my public speaking ability, and I've practiced public speaking. So the more I get opportunities to practice communicating, the better communicator I'm going to be. Now, I still, as a husband, have to become a lot better listener, right? Become more present. I need to become a better listener in all aspects of my life. Now we have that context. Communication is a skill. So we have to actually teach that skill. What happened and what sparked this podcast is we got our butt kicked on Wednesday the other day. Really embarrassed, and we didn't communicate on the court. The other team they pressed us. If you don't know basketball terminology, basically they applied a lot of pressure. We needed our athletes to communicate and work together on the team. Now, could I have done a better job of putting us in places of success and preparing us? Yes, and it was a really frustrating loss because we had a good win on Monday, and it's like, oh, we're going to keep carrying it over. What I realized, and one of our most important things as a coach, we have to recognize when we have an opportunity to learn. So, with that being said, in the game, we didn't communicate well, and we didn't do a number of things well. But we'll talk about communication. We didn't communicate well. What does that tell me? Well, the games are the test, and what it tells me is that we have not practiced enough. Like for me, as the teacher of communication, of how to communicate in the sport of basketball, I have not prepared them well enough for the test. Right? The tests are it's a great opportunity. So yesterday, right? How am I going to teach right communication? And in my head, right, I'm thinking about right, I'm very frustrated, right? We get super frustrated as coaches. We're passionate, we care a lot. I get super frustrated, right, when I feel like I feel like I have talked a lot about communication, but they haven't got it yet. And I had to be really honest with myself. What is going to be the best way for me to be an effective communicator to help them become an effective communicator? Now, in practice yesterday, I, instead of screaming and hollering, right, needing to communicate more, I just demanded it, right? I demanded that they communicate more. And one of the things when it comes to communication, so I'm talking about sports specific, we have to give them, we have to teach them how to communicate. I'll go through a couple of things. So teaching them how to communicate. First off, they don't even know what to communicate. So on defense, right, we have this thing. There are three things. I'll review it before we go to defense every time. Hey, what are the three things we should say? I ask the question. I don't tell them, right? Because what does asking that question do that is different than giving them the answer? It allows them to think, right? It allows them to practice the skill of communicating back to me that they know the three things they need to communicate: ball, gap, help. Those are the three things. Now, how do we communicate? I'll pause it. Hey, I'll use names that are not on my team. Joseph, Joe, I can't hear you, right? Communication is a two-way street. So I asked that. I literally asked them that. What is communication, right? What are the two things that are part of communication? All right. We got to talking and listening. Now, listening is a skill, like I alluded to. I need to continue to improve on that myself as a coach. However, with that being said, we also need to make sure that when we are communicating, that the person is understanding us. So we talked about how do we communicate. Person is across the court. How do I communicate to them to come towards me? It's called flash to the ball, for the basketball term. So how do I communicate to that person to come towards me? Right? Should I whisper or do I demand? So I'll talk to them. I'll be like, hey, you have to call their name and tell them exactly what to do in a loud and clear tone, loud and clear. So I'm teaching them how to do this. And then we're just practicing it. So all throughout practice on court, all we did was practice communication. Now, you may be like, hey, Justin, like, that's great. That's awesome. This sounds like, sunshine and rainbows, but like, how do we hold athletes accountable? So, what I did essentially, if when we were doing our defensive drill, when we weren't talking on defense, you know what we did? We ran, right? And so that is, and essentially, like, they know that if they don't communicate, there's accountability to it. And that's life, right? And so I'm not running them too much, right? Okay, on the line. Boom, down and back. Here we go. Right. It's essentially just do it over and over again until you like it. And you have to have these high standards. And there's going to be times in practice where they're up, right? And then they're down. Oh, on the line, not to our standard, right? And it's our job, it's our responsibility to hold them to that standard and have that accountability, whatever it is, right? It could be push ups, lines. You can kind of do anything within that. It doesn't need to be over the top. It just essentially that just needs to be a reminder to them. Hey, reminder, you're not communicating enough, accountability, right? Because what happens in a game, right? What happens in a game if we don't communicate enough, right? I'm asking them these questions. What happens in a game? We lose, coach. We don't play our best, right? I'm asking them these questions to get them to think and right and get them to practice communicating. Now, after practice, and this is actually more important than probably any of the on-court stuff I'm doing. All I did for 15, 20 minutes, I just had them ask questions. I asked them questions. I had them talk to each other. One of the biggest things I am super concerned about working with youth is their ability to communicate with one another in person, right? They're very comfortable texting each other. I don't, maybe even FaceTime each other. Everything is so tech digital, especially young boys. I see a huge increase in social anxiety and inability to connect in person. And so that's something that we as coaches and as teachers can just help build. I just asked them a series of questions. You can ask as easy of questions of what is your favorite NBA team, favorite player, but I wanted them to get a little bit deeper. I talked to them. What does active listening look like? I just asked them, right? Instead of telling them, this is what active listening, do this, do this, do this. No, we asked them. A lot of times our athletes know the answers, right? It's they don't get that opportunity to practice, right? Practice communication, practice direct communication, practice active listening. So I'm asking them these things, right? And I'm asking them, how did COVID affect your social skills? How does being on social media affect your in-person social skills? And then they get this opportunity to articulate with their teammates about this and communicate, right? I asked it at the end. I was just like, what do you think the purpose of this was? We could have been watching film. We could have been doing all this. What was the purpose? To communicate, right? We overcomplicate things a lot of times, and I think we want our athletes to be great at whatever we value and we care about overnight. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned as a coach, and is really frustrating sometimes, right? When we are like, we're it's embarrassing, right? When our team doesn't play to our vision in our head. When we get embarrassed, but those are the learning opportunities that we have, and it just means that our job as a coach needs to be improved as well. So I hope you got a lot of information out of this episode. If you feel like, for you as a coach or a parent, go send this to another coach or a parent or a friend on how to help our athletes be better communicators. Look, point blank, simply, we have to teach it. We have to teach it. We have to correct it. We have to provide them accountability. And when they do it, great. When this is the most important thing that I'm going to leave you with. If they do their job well, if they communicate well, you have to praise it. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things, is when they do things well, right? And you're saying that what gets celebrated gets repeated. So if you celebrate great communication, you celebrate people being great teammates, your that's part of your environment, and they're going to keep repeating that behavior. So every single week, we'll be dropping a podcast to bring wisdom to you, the coach, the parent, the athlete, influencer, to transform the youth sports industry, to give back and really help our